Hello everyone, my name is Demi. I'm a Cambridge certified English teacher and a teacher trainer. In these sessions, I share with you how to prepare for Cambridge exams, and in this case, we are going to talk about Delta Module 1, Paper 1, Task 3. Let's get started. In my previous videos, I was talking about Module 1, Paper 1, Task 1 and 2. And today I'm going to share the experience of my colleagues and my experience of preparing for this exam and preparing for this particular task. First things first, we need to understand what it is. You're asked to analyze a given speaking or writing activity in terms of the key sub-skills and language features it would involve. It includes the language items and discourse organization skills that the learners would need to be able to control in order to carry out the activity successfully. For this task, you can receive 12 marks max. What to expect? You're asked to evaluate an activity in terms of whether it would be doable by a group of learners, what language items, for example, they would need to have covered before attempting the task according to their level of proficiency. For example, if they have B1 level, it means that you should anticipate which language they are familiar with and which language they use. You need to both identify the sub-skill and give an example or illustration. Don't forget about the example, it's really important. And it is important that the example should be appropriate to the level of competence which the activity is intended for and also specific to that activity. So let's have a look at the example. When you receive a paper and when you have a look at the task, what you need to pay attention to? First of all, you need to pay attention to the level, and you can see over here the level of proficiency is C1, and then you have a look at which piece of writing or speaking it should be. In our case, we can see that this is a writing task, a report, which means we need to understand the features of this genre. We can see that in the task we need to have a look at what are the strengths and weaknesses of education in your country, and we should think, all right, in this context, we probably might expect our students to compare pros and cons, strengths and weaknesses of education, and it means that probably we might expect some comparison. And if we have a look at the second bullet point, what educational developments would you like to see in your country in the future? So here we can see that the use of modal verbs as well as future forms of the verbs might be expected. And since it is a report, you might think about what the feature of a report could be. One of those will be possibly the passive voice. In order to complete this activity successfully, learners at this level would need to use the following key language features: report organization and layout, educational and development lexis. You need to provide 3 key features, which means if you have this in the task, you can't use it anymore in your answer. So you can't talk about the organization or the layout because it's mentioned over here as an example. And you shouldn't write about educational and development lexis because it's also written in the task. So these 2 features should be excluded from your answer, and you need to identify a total of 3 key language features. Bear in mind the level. Here we have advanced level, which means that your students are expected to have good command of English. Let's generate some ideas what these 3 features might be. Well, first of all, if we talk about the report, we may think about some format. What kind of format would it be? What kind of style it would be? Since we can't comment on the report organization and layout, we can talk about the style. In this case, we can see that the style will be either formal or semi-formal, which you will definitely put it into your answer. And the example might be, the aim of this report is to do something pretty formal, and it is unusual for students to do something. Again, it's a formal way of starting the sentence, and these two examples might convey very well what you mentioned. Another feature might be the discourse markers, and I think that discourse markers is something what you should pay attention to everywhere. And in this case, if it's a report, we need to consider what kind of discourse markers would be appropriate. You can't just write discourse markers because it's too general. You need to specify what kind of discourse markers in particular might be expected in this particular task. So in this case, it could be discourse markers related to addition, justification. For instance, what is more? It's a typical example of adding information. Due to is a typical discourse marker that helps us to justify some ideas and provide the reasoning. If we talk about grammar, use of passive for impersonal report style might be a good idea, but you need to be careful because these features should be all different. For example, the beginning can be, parents are given the opportunity to do something. Or another example, pupils are expected to. So you can see in both cases we have passives, and that's actually something what we'll expect from our C1 students to perform and to show in the report. Another feature that you can mention is language for generalization. By saying this, I mean, generally speaking, in general, the phrase like tend to, are likely to. So these are the phrases that can help us generalize. And now let's have a look at the example answers so that you can see how it may look in the booklet. First of all, we talk about style. Formal, semi-formal, impersonal, objective style, no contractions. If you choose any of these words, it will be the right answer according to the guidelines. Then, don't forget about the example. The aim of this report is to, an increase in funding would allow, it is unusual for students to do something. You can also mention language relating to numbers and statistics. For example, the vast majority of 4-year-olds, only 1 in 10 graduates. You can see here the discourse markers that I mentioned previously, signposting, addition, justification. And you have the examples here. What is more, due to, given, or given that. The following example refers to grammar related to the style, the use of passive for impersonal report style. Example, parents are given the opportunity to do something. Pupils are expected to do something. In this case, when you deal with grammar, you need to be really specific and precise because, let's say, in this example, we don't have the tenses. But let's say if we talk about the biography, and if you have a different genre, you would rather go for some specific tenses. You can't just say past tenses. You would rather go for past perfect and past simple to talk about past events and to demonstrate past events or a sequence of events in the past. This is something what you need to consider. Past simple to talk about past facts. That's something what will be more specific. In this case, we don't deal with some particular tense. Instead, you can see that it's more important to deep dive into the use of passives, the form, and also the use of modals. And in this case, we can see that use of modals for suggestions and hypothesizing about the future could be relevant. An example, this would lead to, I would recommend, this could result in. These are really good examples to relate to the feature that you mentioned. Language for generalization, as I previously mentioned, example might be tend to, generally speaking. And you can see that you don't need to write full sentences because in fact time is really precious, and if you organize your answer in this way, it will be more than enough for the examiner to understand your point and you will meet the requirements. Then Language for comparing and contrasting. In this case, you can see that this is a really important feature which shouldn't be underestimated. And I would say that this is one of the key features since we have the strengths and weaknesses that we need to mention in the task. The example. The subjects are much more diverse. Fewer students enter higher education. Nevertheless, these are the ways how you can compare and contrast. And now let's have a look at the comments. First of all, you as a candidate are expected to identify a subskill and clearly illustrate it with the examples. Secondly, the layout has to be clear with the use of colon and example. The examiner should easily approach your writing, which means you need to write distinctly. Thirdly, the function must be relevant and the language items need to express that function as stated, and the examples are specific to the context. A lot of things altogether, they do matter. Fourthly, the exponents which illustrate the function must be within the capability of an average learner at this level. Keep in mind the level of proficiency of the students that is mentioned in the task. You can't mention the example which is higher or relatively lower than the level of proficiency of the student. Otherwise, you won't receive the mark for this answer. And the examples must be complete, not just sentence stamps, but full examples relevant to the specific task. And now, let's have a look at how to prepare. First of all, look at skill tasks in published ELT materials and practice identifying language features. Plan lessons with the skills focus and predict what language features your learners will need. Observe your learners' responses to skill tasks used in the classroom and note in which language features they might have usefully been prepared. Consult other teachers when preparing skills lessons to gain greater input on the language features involved in particular tasks. Brainstorming is all the time a good thing. Read discourse and skills analysis references. You will broaden your knowledge and it will be easier to approach this task in the exam. Read practical guides to methodology and pedagogical issues involved in writing and speaking skills. It will enable you to come up with the answers faster. What to start with? First of all, only discuss what the rubric requires. Note carefully which language feature has been excluded in the rubric, what we were discussing previously. You remember, we were talking about the layout and the structure, and also there was some part about the lexis related to development and education. Those two were excluded from the example answer because they have been already mentioned in the task. Provide 3 features and ensure that each has an appropriate example or illustration. Make sure the language features and examples relate specifically to the text described in the task, and not just the genre in general. Simply list the points you wish to make, avoiding any introduction or summary or conclusion. The most important thing is to make it as simple as possible and as readable as it is possible so that the examiner can easily understand where the feature is and where the example is. And the advice. There are 12 marks available, so you shouldn't spend more than 12-14 minutes on this task. There are 2 marks available for each feature you identify, plus a further 2 for the example. So examples matter. Be aware of 2 things. Aim for a range of different types of sub-skill and discourse features. Don't talk about the same thing, like grammar or lexis. Expose yourself to the variety of those, and in order to practice, you need to do the past papers, and the past exam papers might definitely bring you closer to your goal. Pick different genres and try to understand what are the common features of this or that genre, what are the peculiarities of this genre, grammar, lexis, and probably the organization. All those and many others matter. The way it is written, active or passive voice, all these things really matter. The names and even the pronouns which are mentioned can be the feature of some particular piece of writing or speaking. So this is something you need to care about. The second thing that you need to be aware of: avoid overlapping. It means that you shouldn't repeat the same thing twice. Let's say if you talk about style, as the second feature, there might be lexis related to the topic and you need to specify exactly what this topic is. As for the third one, it can be some piece of grammar, let's say use of past tenses, and you need to specify past tenses. Which past tenses? Past perfect simple, past simple. You need to be specific, avoiding vague answers. And the last but not least, you can't know everything, but you can increase the probability of doing better in the exam by doing past papers, noticing your gap and analyzing the guidelines to better meet the requirements. If you see any other features of the report that haven't been mentioned in this video, please share them in the comments down below, as well as if you have any questions related to task 3 from paper 1, I would be very glad to answer them all in the comments or in the upcoming videos. I hope that this video was helpful for you. If you liked it, your thumbs up will be highly appreciated, and if you subscribe to my channel, you will receive more videos that will help you and guide you through the exam preparation. I wish you good luck in your Delta Module 1 prep, and see you soon in my upcoming video. Bye!